I've been to their funerals, and they were living for hell. But because when they were 11 years old, they were baptized, the preacher preached them into heaven. I'm sure I'm not alone in that scenario. But my personal belief, and the belief of the Church of God, because we fall into this Wesleyan theology. There are other theologies out there. There are other ways to believe this, but I just want to share with you a moment where the Church of God stands on that, which we are associated with. Not that if you disagree with this, we're going to kick you out. Don't hear that at all. So let's move on to learning to stand with Christ through salvation and holiness. And for that, I want to go to this is the questions we want to ask. Number one, what is salvation? Number two, what is holiness? And what do they have to do with God? And so we're going to approach this through a story. The story of Luke 19, 1 through 9. When I told Leland this morning what I was going to be preaching on, she sang the song to me. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. Now I'm singing it like Gilligan's Island for some reason. Sorry. I don't know. I can sing Amazing Grace to Gilligan's Island too. I don't know why, but I can even sing my high school alma mater to the tune of Gilligan's Island. I don't know why. Anyway, but she sang the song to me because she was excited. She knew the story. And so I had to ask her, what is a wee little man, right? And she's like, I guess it's just like a really tiny one. To which I told her like my worst joke ever, which is, what's the shortest man in the Bible? And it's like Simeon the Shuhite. And she didn't quite grasp that, but that's okay. All right, so anyway, Jesus enters Jericho and was passing through, and a man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd, so he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to the guest of a sinner? He has gone to be the guest of a sinner. Sorry, missed a word, important one. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. Now there is a lot that is going on in this story. But what a cool story that someone who starts out the morning is like, I just want to see this guy. And then by the end of the day, he is hosting the Son of God in his home. I mean, that's a pretty cool day. That's a pretty cool moment to be able to do that. So in this story, where do we see salvation? Where do we see holiness? And what causes each? And so in this, for me, the questions that I'm looking at with this, where do we see salvation? Obviously at the end of the story, it comes back to this idea that Jesus comes in, says he wanted to see who Jesus was. So he ran ahead, climbed a sycamore tree, and then when he reached him, he called Zacchaeus down, and he says, Lord, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I've cheated anyone out of anything, I will pay them back 4 times the amount. So in this story, there are actually multiple people that may be receiving salvation. There is Zacchaeus himself, and through this process, his home, who is being treated to the presence of Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus, the Son of God, from whom they will receive much grace and much wisdom in that day. But also you got to think about, Zacchaeus is now taking to this idea that if there's anyone I've ever cheated, I'm paying them back like 4-fold. I mean, I've been cheated out of money before. I'd love for the person who cheated me out to call me up and go, hey, I'm going to give you 4 times what I took from you. But there's this idea that the salvation that Zacchaeus is receiving is actually manifest out to all of those that he has encountered before. So salvation is strictly the act of saving. The terminology is identical. Salvation is the act of saving. So what is Zacchaeus being saved from? And more importantly, what is he being saved for? So Zacchaeus, is salvation about life after death, or is it about here and now? And this is kind of a key to this. It says in this passage, salvation has come to your home today. How many of us were sold a bill of goods that said that salvation is about eternity and heaven? Because it is, but it's also for here and now. Salvation has a lot to do with how we live our lives today. But so often we have been told that salvation is about fire insurance. It's about not going to hell. And salvation is that, but if you only do a deathbed confession and you only do a deathbed walk with Christ, you miss so much of what he has to offer us. You know, the story that is so difficult for many people in the New Testament is this parable that Jesus talks about a landowner who goes out and he hires workers in the morning and he offers them a day's wage, and he goes out a couple hours later and he hires more workers and he offers them the same day's wage. And he keeps going throughout the day until he goes out an hour before quitting time and he still offers a day's wage. And this story is frustrating to those who have worked all day. And it is graceful to those who only worked in the evening, but here's the part of the story that we often miss. Those who did not get hired until the last hour of the day spent all day wondering how they were going to feed their family. They spent all day in turmoil and anguish and worry and fear and hurt and pain, and they are having to walk through that through the entire day until the last hour. Whereas the people who got hired first, their fears were alleviated immediately. And so for those of us who walk with Christ all of our lives, we get to walk with Christ all of our lives. That is a beautiful thing, because there is so much of this life that we are not subjected to when we choose to walk with him. It doesn't mean that this world doesn't still have a lot of hell to throw at us. It does. Satan is still rampant. He is still moving. He is still going. He is still performing. But for those who walk with Christ, salvation is available today. Now, we don't often know what that looks like. You know, I've had conversations with people around here recently that are struggling to hear the word of God. And I think so often a part of this salvation and holiness, this walk of Christ, we forget that those of us who have been on this journey for decades forget what it was like to have only been in this journey a couple of years when we didn't know nothing. When we didn't know exactly what God's voice sounded like, when no one had taken time to show us how to study the Bible or how to read the Bible or how to go into it. And I think this is one of the biggest struggles in the church today, is the fact that we stink at discipleship. And I can say that point blank about Trey Oldham's ministry for 22 years. I can say that point blank about North Crossings Church. And I can say that about every church in the United States that I am familiar with. We stink at discipleship. Our lives are too busy. We have way too much to do to meet up with somebody and actually walk through life with them. When my boys were baptized, I was like, hey, they were baptized with a couple of other folks, and I was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if like monthly we got together and had breakfast at the Waffle House or something, and we just talked about life stuff. Anybody want to guess how many times that happened? Aiden's got a good guess. 0, that's exactly right. Why? Because Saturdays are so hectic at my house. It's the only day that my entire family has at home, and it's the only day that we actually have off to do projects and different things like that all together, and so it didn't happen. So I'm not standing here saying y'all failed. That was my promise. I failed. But if I'm stinking at it, how are we doing? Right? So this is a challenge for all of us. Salvation and holiness is about learning that God has a plan for us. It's not just to save us from hell. It's not just to save us from something. It's also to save us for something. That's what the holiness part of this is. The holiness part is that God has a plan, and you are set apart for it. In fact, that's what the word holy means. Set apart for a purpose. So if you are set apart for something, you are set apart just like Zacchaeus was. Let's see, I'm going to skip down to all the other things because what was Zacchaeus' purpose? Zacchaeus is called to share the grace, love, and compassion of the Father. So what do you think you're saved for? The same thing. Same thing. When people see you, do they think, here comes grace? Here comes love. Here comes compassion. If they don't think that about you, it's time to do a self-check. Because that's what people should see. The longer we walk with Christ, the more we should look like him. Because Jesus never stopped being interrupted. He was interrupted on everything he ever did, and I don't ever recall him going, I am done with interruptions. No more. Although I do that all the time. I'm like, I'm clocking out, I'm going home. It's like, I'm done for the day, no more. And then I don't answer my phone. Sorry, guys. I don't usually do that, but there are moments. I just turn it on silent so I don't know that you called. Anyway. Tell you all my secrets. Anyway, so this is the constant challenge that we have. We are not just saved from this life where Satan wants to kill, steal, and destroy. But we are called to the Christ-like life where he wants to heal, still, and restore. Jesus wants to make life easier on us. And often we tend to find ourselves in a hell of a situation. Whether it's under our own making or whether it's under the making of this world, we find ourselves in a battle. And Jesus wants to heal. He wants to still. And he wants to restore. And that's what salvation and holiness are actually all about. Saving you from something is the salvation point. Saving you for something, that's the holiness part. He wants you to offer up that grace, love, and compassion over and over and over again. When Jesus is asked, how many times should I forgive? Should I forgive 7? Which was an astronomical number by anyone's calculations. Yeah, sure, I'll forgive them 7 times. That's the perfect number. And what does Jesus respond? How about 70 times that? Dang, I'll stop counting. Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. At 490 times, are you really going to keep count? Oh, that's 491, you're done. At that point in time, it's just habitual. So you just keep going, right? I mean, you don't forget. So this morning, I just want to leave you with this. What are you saved from? What are you saved for? And what are you set apart for? That's the questions I want you to begin asking, because when we get these questions down for ourselves, then when other people start having questions about Christianity because they see us living differently, we have a better conversation place to start with them. Well, the whole point, someone asks, oh, how do I become a Christian? What do I do? What is the point of Christianity? Oh my gosh, the point of Christianity? Have you seen this world? Have you engaged with the local, national, or global news lately? I mean, it's a scary place. It's a scary place. But I don't live in a place of fear because I have God in here. So that's like huge. That's like a big deal. I don't have to face this world the way it is. And so even just engaging, starting from that point, well, how can I find that peace? Look, let's sit down and talk. Let's start a Bible study together. Let's start meeting for breakfast once a month and just kind of walking through ideas. If you want to know what discipleship, that's what it is. We make it this huge, incredible, scary thing. Like, well, I have to have this game plan down. You don't. You just have to live life with somebody. That's what discipleship is. The disciples that follow Jesus, I don't think Jesus had a 12-point plan on how to fix them. He just said, walk with me. Come walk with me and we'll figure it out together. Because in living life together, you run into those issues. And so our worship team is going to come back up, and I just want you to process through these questions. What are you personally saved from? What are you personally saved for? And what are you set apart for? It's okay. You can throw it down.
I think it was me.
All right, I'm going to say a prayer. They're going to lead us in some worship. And as you can tell, I'm getting tired. But I have enjoyed this morning. I hope you got something out of it. I hope I didn't ramble too much. Because I had way more that I wanted to say, but I had to scratch it because y'all didn't want to sit here till 2. So let's pray. God, we heard that. We hope you did. Father, in this moment, we are listening to and for your voice. In this moment, God, we are asking for clarity on our individual calls, on our individual ministry, on our individual message. We are asking for your grace, your love, and your compassion so that we may be able to offer that to everyone we see. Father, may we be a part of your plan for changing this world and bringing hope